Whispers in the walls. It was a quiet, sleepy town, the kind where everyone knew everyone else's business. At the edge of the town stood an old, crumbling house, known to all as the Holloway House. The stories surrounding it were as old as the house itself. People said it was cursed, that the Holloway family had disappeared without a trace one stormy night many years ago, leaving only echoes of screams and the faintest whisper in the walls. But for some reason, Emma, a young writer, found herself fascinated by the house. She'd heard all the stories, of course. Her curiosity burned brighter than her fear. She decided to stay there for a weekend to finish her novel. Something about the silence of the house called to her, as if it had stories of its own to tell. The house was larger than she expected, its wood creaking underfoot as she moved through the darkened halls. The air was thick, heavy with dust and something else, something she couldn't name. As night fell, Emma set up her things in a room at the end of the hall, one with a large, cracked window that overlooked the garden, now overrun with tangled vines. The first night was uneventful, at least, she thought so. She wrote until late into the night, the scratch of her pen the only sound in the still house. But then, as she started to drift off to sleep, she heard it, a soft, almost imperceptible whisper coming from the walls. She sat up, straining her ears to listen. Emma. It was her name, clear as day. Her heart pounded, her pulse racing. She told herself it was the wind, the house settling. But then the whisper came again, louder this time, almost like a breath against her ear. Emma, you shouldn't have come. Terrified, she stood up and walked toward the wall, pressing her ear against it, hoping to hear anything that might explain the voice. But all she could hear was her own shallow breathing, mixed with the oppressive silence. The next day, she decided to explore the house, to try and find some logical explanation for the strange sound. She ventured into the basement, a damp, cold place filled with old furniture draped in sheets. The air here was thick, heavy with mildew and decay. She wandered deeper into the shadows, her flashlight flickering as though it were struggling to stay alive. Then she saw it, a door hidden behind a pile of old crates. The door was so old that its wood was splintered and warped. There was no handle, only a rusted keyhole. Emma felt a strange compulsion to open it. She is opening a door, though she couldn't explain why. As she approached, the whispers grew louder, more urgent. Don't open it! Don't! Ignoring the voice, she jammed a nail file into the keyhole, and to her surprise, the door creaked open. Inside was a small, dusty room, its air stifling and stagnant. The walls were lined with old portraits, the faces of the Holloway family, their eyes strangely lifelike. But what caught her attention was the center of the room. There, in the middle, stood a wooden chair. Tied to the chair, still and lifeless, was a person. But the person wasn't alive. The body was pale, withering, and covered in marks that looked like they had been burned into the skin. The face, half mummified, was unmistakable. It was Emma's own face, twisted in a silent scream. Horrified, she stumbled back, falling into the threshold of the room. The whispers grew louder now, surrounding her from all directions. Join us! Join us! She ran, but the walls seemed to close in on her, the whispers echoing in her ears, pulling her toward the room. As she reached the stairs, she turned back one last time. The door was shut, but she could still hear them, those whispers, calling her name. Emma, come back. The next morning, they found her, standing at the edge of the garden, staring at the house with an empty look in her eyes. Her pen was still clutched in her hand, and her notebook, open to the last page, read simply, "They're waiting." But when they searched the house, there was no sign of Emma's body, only the faint, eerie sound of whispers in the walls. And from that day on, no one ever saw her again.